In the shadow of the rugged Catalina mountains, where the desert sun paints the sky in hues of burnt orange and the saguaro cacti stand like silent sentinels, lies the affluent enclave of the Catalina foothills in Tucson, Arizona. It's a place of quiet luxury, where homes blend seamlessly with the arid landscape and life unfolds at a measured pace. But on the early morning of February 2026, that tranquility shattered like glass underfoot. Nancy Guthrie, an 84-year-old widow known for her unyielding faith, her devotion to family, and her quiet strength, vanished from her beloved adobe home without a trace. What began as a routine night transformed into a nightmare that gripped the nation, drawing in the FBI, igniting media frenzy, and leaving a family in anguish. This is the story of Nancy Guthrie, her remarkable life, the chilling events of her disappearance, and the relentless search for answers that continues to unfold. Nancy Ellen Long entered the world on January 27, 1942, in the small suburb of Fort Wright, Kentucky, just across the Ohio River from the bustling city of Cincinnati. Born into a modest family, she grew up in a world shaped by Catholic traditions and the discipline of all-girls schools. From her earliest days at elementary school through high school, Nancy was immersed in an environment that emphasized faith, education, and moral fortitude. Her round cheeks, curly hair, and bright blue eyes, traits that would pass down through generations, were matched by a spirited personality that drew people in. Fort Wright was a close-knit community where neighbors knew each other by name and life revolved around church, school, and family gatherings. Nancy's childhood was one of simplicity, but it instilled in her a resilience that would carry her through life's tempests. As a young woman, Nancy pursued higher education at the University of Kentucky, where she majored in journalism and threw herself into campus life. She worked on the student newspaper, the Kentucky Colonel, serving as the society editor, a role that had her chronicling the vibrant world of sororities, Greek events, and university socials. It was during these formative years that Nancy's path crossed with destiny. On a blind date at the University of Kentucky basketball game, she met Charles Errol "Chuck" Guthrie, a Georgia Tech engineering graduate hailing from Pineville, Kentucky. Chuck was a mining engineer, ambitious and adventurous, with a career that promised to take him around the globe. Nancy later recounted to her children how she knew instantly, "That's the man I'm going to marry." Their whirlwind romance culminated in a wedding on December 28, 1963, in a ceremony that blended Southern charm with heartfelt vows. Thus began a partnership that would span continents and create a legacy of love and family. The Guthries' life was nothing stationary. Chuck's work in mining and oil extraction led them on an international odyssey. They hopped from one exotic locale to another, embracing the challenges of expat life. Their first child, Annie, arrived, followed by son Cameron, who would grow up to become a fighter pilot in the U.S. military, embodying the family's spirit of service and adventure. Then, on December 27, 1971, in the vibrant city of Melbourne, Australia, their youngest daughter, Savannah, was born. Savannah would one day become a household name as co-anchor of NBC's Today Show, but in those early years, she was just the baby of the family, toddling through foreign lands under her mother's watchful eye. By 1973, when Savannah was barely 2, the family decided to put down roots in Tucson, Arizona. They purchased a charming, burnt adobe home in the upscale Catalina foothills, near Campbell Avenue and Skyline Drive, a sprawling property with views of the desert expanse. It was here that Nancy created a haven, turning the house into a hub of warmth and stability amid the chaos of Chuck's travels. Nancy was the quintessential stay-at-home mother, dedicating herself to raising her 3 children with a blend of discipline, love, and faith. The Guthries were devout Baptists, attending church every Sunday without fail. As Savannah later reflected in her 2024 book, Mostly What God Does, we liked to say God was the 6th member of the Guthrie family. Nancy's faith wasn't just a Sunday ritual, it permeated every aspect of their lives. She journaled daily, sang hymns to her grandchildren, and wove grandma stories filled with biblical wisdom. Her home was a place of routines, family dinners, bedtime prayers, and endless encouragement. Nancy encouraged her children's passions, Annie's artistic pursuits, Cameron's dreams of flying, and Savannah's early interest in journalism, which Nancy nurtured by pushing her to study at the University of Arizona so she could stay close to home. Tragedy struck like a thunderbolt on June 10, 1988. Chuck, only 49, suffered a fatal heart attack while on a business trip in Mexico. Nancy, at 46, was left a widow with 3 teenagers to raise. Savannah was just 16, on the cusp of her senior year. The loss was devastating, a chasm that threatened to swallow the family whole. But Nancy, drawing from her deep well of faith and grit, refused to break. She had grit without self-pity, an unshakable faith that carried us through. She shelved her own grief to become the family's anchor, ensuring her children not only survived but thrived. Annie and Savannah chose to attend the University of Arizona, partly to stay near their mother, who now faced the world alone. To support the family, Nancy entered the workforce in August 1990, joining the University of Arizona as a spokeswoman for the University Medical Center. Her natural charisma and communication skills propelled her upward. By the time she retired in January 2007, she had risen to Associate Vice President of University Advancement. During her tenure at UA, Nancy left an indelible mark. She coordinated Center Stage, a monthly lunchtime concert series that brought music to patients and staff, lifting spirits in the midst of illness. She organized MedCamp, a program for high school students aspiring to careers in medicine, inspiring the next generation. In 2000, she served as president of the Southern Arizona chapter of the Public Relations Society of America, earning accolades for her leadership. Colleagues remembered her as extremely positive, with an amazingly positive spirit and kindness that radiated. One reporter described her as a very good person through and through, someone with no enemies. Nancy's professional life was an extension of her personal ethos: service, positivity, and community. Retirement brought Nancy back to her roots, family, and faith. She doted on her grandchildren, Vale and Charlie from Savannah, and others from Annie and Cameron. Annie, a poet and jeweler, lived nearby in Tucson with her husband Tommaso Ciani, providing Nancy with close companionship. Cameron, the fighter pilot, and Savannah, now a media powerhouse in New York, visited often. Nancy lived independently in her foothills home, a testament to her resilience. At 84, she managed chronic pain, a pacemaker, blood thinners, and limited mobility, but her mind remained sharp. No cognitive decline marred her days. She was punctual, routine-driven, and active in her community. She played mahjong with friends, attended St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church faithfully, and hosted gatherings by her crackling fireplace. Just 2 days before her disappearance, on January 30th, she confirmed church plans with a friend and celebrated her 84th birthday with games and laughter. Friends called her a Tucson matriarch, revered for her selflessness and deep convictions. Nancy's faith was her compass. Raised Catholic but embracing Baptist traditions in marriage, she lived as a good and faithful servant, as Savannah described. In a multi-faith family, Savannah's husband Michael Feldman is Jewish. Nancy's influence fostered openness and spirituality. She taught her children to find their own paths, but her example was clear. God was ever present, a source of comfort in joy and sorrow. In 2022, on Today, Savannah paid tribute to her mother's 80th birthday. She loves us fiercely. Her selflessness is why we grew up to do anything. Nancy's life was a tapestry of love, loss, achievement, and unwavering belief, a story that seemed destined for a peaceful conclusion. But fate had other plans. January 31, 2026 dawned like any other Saturday in Tucson. The winter air was crisp, the gem show buzzed in the city below, drawing crowds from afar. Nancy, ever the creature of habit, spent her day in quiet routine. After 5:30 p.m., she took an Uber to Annie's nearby home for dinner, a short ride, but one she preferred due to her mobility issues. The evening was pleasant, filled with family chatter. At 9:48 p.m., Tommaso dropped her back at her Foothills residence. The garage door closed at 9:50 p.m., sealing what would be her last confirmed sighting. Inside, Nancy likely followed her nightly ritual, perhaps a prayer, a glance at her journal before retiring to bed. The clock ticked into the early hours of February 1, 2026. At 1:47 a.m., Nancy's doorbell camera mysteriously disconnected, a glitch or something more sinister. Then at 2:12 a.m., an emotion alert captured the unthinkable. A masked figure, gloved and armed with what appeared to be a gun in a holster, tampering with the camera. The intruder, estimated at 5'9" to 5'10" with an average build and possibly a black mustache, carried a black Ozark Trail 25L backpack, bulging as if packed for a grim purpose. Was it a tarp? Tools? A kill kit, as some speculated? The figure moved with purpose, vanishing into the shadows. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker app disconnected from her phone, a silent alarm that she was no longer in control. What happened next is a mosaic of horror pieced together from evidence. Nancy was taken from her bed against her will. A blood trail at the door, confirmed as hers via DNA, suggested a struggle or injury, perhaps from her thin skin and blood thinners. The home wasn't ransacked, no valuables were stolen, it wasn't a simple robbery. By 11 a.m., when Nancy missed her church service, alarm bells rang. A friend called the family. At 11:56 a.m., relatives arrived to an empty house. At 12:03 p.m., they dialed 911. Deputies swarmed the scene by 12:15 p.m., securing what was now a crime scene of foul play. The investigation exploded into action. On February 2, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos declared it a kidnapping, citing evidence of abduction. Savannah, from her New York studio, posted a heartfelt plea on Instagram for prayers. The FBI joined, drawn by the high-profile connection and potential interstate elements. February 3 brought ransom notes to local station KOLD-TV and TMZ, demanding millions in Bitcoin and crypto, with deadlines and threats. They referenced details only an insider might know, Nancy's clothing, home layout, but no proof of life emerged, and the family suspected hoaxes. A California man was arrested for a fake note, but the real perpetrators remained elusive. By February 4, Savannah and her siblings released a video, "We're ready to talk, but we need proof she's alive." February 5 saw more notes, but deadlines passed without contact. The family pledged, "We will pay," facing a $6 million demand by February 9, unmet due to no verification. On February 10th, the FBI released enhanced suspect footage, recovered with private tech help like Google's. A person of interest in Rio Rico was detained and released. February 12, suspect details sharpened, reward hiked to $100,000, later $200,000 plus with anonymous donations from Milwaukee. The breakthroughs and heartbreaks continued. February 13, gloves matching the video found up to 2 miles away, bearing male DNA not matching family or databases. A Range Rover was seized. February 15, DNA confirmed as unknown male. February 17, no CODIS match. Investigators turned to genetic genealogy, tracing family trees via commercial databases. February 18, biological evidence from the home, more DNA profiles entered the lab. A mother and son were detained via search warrants but released, unrelated. Sheriff Nanos pleaded emotionally, "Just let her go, it's better for you." No evidence pointed to Mexico, though cross-border information was shared. An accomplice wasn't ruled out. The lone figure on camera might have had help. Searches were exhaustive. 400 personnel, dogs, drones, helicopters with signal sniffers hunting Nancy's pacemaker signal. The desert was combed in a 2-mile radius, brush by brush. Tips flooded in, thousands to 1-800-CALL FBI and PCSD lines. Media swarmed, international headlines, Savannah's Today hiatus, even former President Trump's tweet, "Strong clues soon." Independent journalists live-streamed, adding chaos but also eyes. Yet, as February 19 dawned, day 19 of the ordeal, Nancy remained missing. No body, no closure, but hope flickered. Theories swirled like desert dust storms. Was it a robbery gone awry? An intruder, expecting riches in the affluent home, jewelry, art, cash, surprises Nancy. A struggle ensues. She injures easily, bleeds profusely due to thinners. Panic sets in, perhaps a heart attack from shock. To evade murder charges, the perpetrator drags her away. She couldn't walk far, buries her in the vast desert. But why no theft? Why the full backpack on entry? Or was it targeted kidnapping, leveraging Savannah's fame for ransom? The notes suggest it, but hoaxes cloud the truth. No real contact implies she may not have survived the night. Mexico ties? Dismissed for now. A heart event during abduction, her pacemaker failing to save her? The app disconnection haunts investigators. Friction emerged, whispers of tension between local sheriff's department and FBI over evidence sharing, though denied. Public pressure mounted, daily briefings were suggested to balance transparency. The case highlighted disparities. Thousands go missing yearly with less fanfare, but Nancy's story united strangers in prayer. Her family, cleared early, clung to faith. Savannah's words echoed. Her deep and abiding faith and goodness would see them through. As the sun sets over Tucson once more, the search for Nancy Guthrie endures. A woman of quiet power whose life touched so many deserves answers. In the words of her faith, hope does not disappoint. Tips could crack the case, rewards await. For now, the desert holds its secrets, but the story of Nancy, Kenty girl, world traveler, devoted mother, community pillar, remains a beacon. May she be found and justice served.